What is going on YouTube? This is Acid Root. So I'm going to review the seventh album by rapper Nas. Basically, this project is called Street's Disciple, and it came out in the fall of 2004. Now, this was a hit album by Nas. It's kind of here and there. Places like Double XL and some of those type places kind of say that it's kind of like a hit and miss kind of double album, I'd have to say. But I wanted to see what it's about just because I liked this particular album. I knew about a few songs on here, like Just a Moment, some of those type ones, but I never full blown kind of listened to it up to I never full blown listened to the whole project up until this point. So I wanted to see what this project was definitely about, just to see how Nas kind of fares with. I wanted to see how this project kind of particularly kind of fares with Nas in like the sense of like a double album as far as that pitch kind of happens. Because some folks can do it. Like Afro Man had a pretty good one. It's been a while since I've reviewed double albums that I'm not completely familiar with, like Tupac and Biggie. But some of the ones like Jay Z's Blueprint 2 was really good. Even if that wasn't full blown classic, a lot of people don't see it as a classic. That was definitely a pretty super stellar type one. I liked Afroman's Afroholic double album. I kind of felt like this one's pretty solitary. This is definitely going to get an above average score. I'd have to say it's better than I thought it was going to be. It's just kind of the concept behind it. It had a lot of good. This album had a lot of good quality on here, but it doesn't really have a ton of guests. I would have to suppose. I'm kind of under. This album has a lot of good quality on here, but it doesn't really have a ton of guests on here. It's kind of the only one of the few minor disappointments is the fact that Nas basically almost handles this full blown album kind of by himself for the most part. I just would have to kind of say I would have liked. I really felt like a standout on this particular album was Virgo with Ludacris, and I definitely think that there should have been more songs like that. Like, it would have been great to have seen him do a song with Lil Wayne or some folks like that, just some contemporaries from like the mid-late 2000s as far as some of those folks kind of happened. I mean, I realize that by this point, Nas is like a legend in the game, obviously with hit albums like Stillmatic and Illmatic and some of those type ones, and I Am and some of those particular type ones. But I'd have to say this is a pretty quality release. Definitely does better than expected in terms of the concept of it being a double album. This is probably one of the more notable double albums in terms of rap music, especially out of the 2000s. So when folks say that most people can't pull off a double album, it may not be a full blown classic like Biggie's Life After Death or Tupac's All Eyes on Me. It may not be a full blown classic like Biggie's Life After Death or Tupac's All Eyes on Me, but I would have to definitely say that this is pretty much above average. This is definitely in more shapes and more facets than one. This is one that's probably over 70%, probably pretty good. I'd have to say there's 23 songs on this particular album if you slash the two skits on this particular project. Now I'd have to say that two-thirds of this particular project are pretty wicked. That's pretty good concept as far as that pitch kind of happens. So Nas mostly delivers on here, and the fact of the matter is there's 3 singles on top of that, so you get some good stuff to kind of dissect. Sometimes it's kind of tricky when you'll get like a 30-song album and you'll only get 1 or 2 singles or something like that, no guests or something like that. But this is actually a pretty warranted project. It has more better beats. Like in the past, I know that Nas has kind of got complaints that he doesn't really always have a ton of good productions and some of that type of stuff, but this is actually a pretty well produced album. I'd have to say a lot of these moments, I mean, he does have some thought provoking moments more often than what I probably would have full blown kind of liked. But I do like the concept of just getting some of these. It's just kind of a more faceted type album. It's just kind of like a balanced breakfast in the format. This album is just kind of like a balanced breakfast in like the format of a double album. So it's just kind of the pitch behind it. It's a little bit more multifaceted than Tupac's All Eyes on Me. When I think of like Biggie and Tupac, like Biggie was a lot more contemporary, had a lot more dance records on there, just a lot more stepping out and just kind of night jazz. Biggie had a lot more night jazz and kind of more mafioso type feels about it. So it's just kind of the concept of like a glitzy life and then a darker mafioso type life. And then Tupac had like the thug life and the summery type life kind of down. But Nas kind of has like some of these kind of East Coast city stepping. And this is kind of a makeshift album. There's a lot of kind of introspective, kind of concrete rose type stuff just within the concept of just being like some makeshift kind of city stepping and some thought provoking type stuff kind of mixed in with like some East Coast kind of grime. And that's kind of the pitch that I got from some of these particular projects. There is some bounce on here. There are some nightclub songs and stuff like that. Nas does step out a little bit. There are some smoking songs like Thief's Theme and some of that type of stuff. It's just kind of the concept. Yeah, there's just a lot of good variety on here. This is a pretty balanced album. This is just a pretty balanced double album. I'd have to overall say it's just rather quality. So it's definitely, you can do a lot worse than picking up this record. And it's not bad in any sense. I'd have to say it's pretty well above average, I'd have to suppose. That's kind of the concept. We'll go ahead and talk about some of the singles on here. So basically, there were 3 singles, and the first one was Thief's Theme. So this is basically like Thief's Theme is like a low key kind of murky smoke if you cut. I'd have to say it's a definite kind of drowsy hangout gem. I would feel like it's just got a dungeon like feel about it, and it's just a mid pace kind of. And this song is just a mid pace kind of gab song. So this is definitely kind of a social gem and just like a mid pace kind of sense. Just kind of here and there, just in terms of the The social degree of it is just kind of here and there, but it's definitely a pretty good steadfast type hangout type gym to kind of have just within a sense of like some dens and dungeons and things like that. Just some kind of quality type places. Just a real good kind of den type tune to kind of have just within that pitch. Just real kind of sleepy type one. Just a real kind of murky type beat. Definitely like this one. Probably one of the best beats on the album in terms of like smoke ready tunes as far as that pitch kind of happens. This one's just this one just oozes kind of personality. I'd have to suppose it's almost kind of like a swag rap type song, just in like an lazy kind of East Coast sense. This feels like smoke's just billowing out of the room, just stuff like that. Great smoking song, I'd have to say. The second single is Bridging the Gap, and this is kind of a Southern Fried type one in terms of like a more ZZ Top and some of those type folks, Leonard Skinner type stuff. I'd have to suppose this really feels like out of the South from like the 1940s or 50s or something like that, something like Dukes of Hazzard type S type stuff. I'd have to say, but this is basically like a Southern Fried kind of personal cut. I'd feel like it's just an uptown and kind of old town kind of fashion beat that it has, and it's just got some thrifty kind of jive about it. The song is just uptown and old town fashion, I would have to say, and the beat just kind of has like a thrifty kind of jive about it. So this is kind of the concept. This is kind of one where it just would be when you're more uptown and more kind of gravel road type places, just more kind of in places of like a more kind of kickback and old fashioned kind of sense as far as that pitch kind of happens. This is just a good tune to kind of have. Now, this worked a lot better back in 2004. I mean, things have kind of upgraded in 20 years, getting to 20. Things have kind of upgraded in 20 years, getting to 2024, but I would still have to say for like those old gravel type road type towns and places like that, just with a more classic and retro kind of pitches, is a good concept to take it back to the 50s, 60s, and places like that. Just places where Dukes of Hazzard and some of those type places would be kind of prevalent. I'd have to say it's a good concept. Just kind of a more old fashioned type town and places like that as far as that pitch kind of happens. Just a nice one. I like the concept of this particular. I like the concept of this particular one. It's just kind of an odd. Bridging the Gap is kind of an offhanded kind of Nas song. This is not really at all like a club song or a dance song or a lady song or something like that. It's just a very kind of personable type one. It's kind of more for heritage and stuff like that. Just kind of a real steadfast, just kind of kick back and just marinate in like your heritage and some of those type of times. It's a more personable kind of, it's a summer song, I would definitely say. Good June, July kind of summer haze as far as that pitch kind of has, but it's just, it really doesn't have much recreation. Definitely not a smoking song or a good drinking song or something like that. It's just kind of a more this old town kind of fashion type song as far as that pitch kind of has. But I do like this one. Probably just a few months ago or a couple of years ago, I probably wouldn't have liked this song at all, but I appreciate the facet of this particular song now, so it's a good one. The third song is one of the songs I've been most familiar with, and that would be Just a Moment. This has Quan on here, and Quan does the hook, and this is a pretty excellent song. This is probably one of my favorite Nas songs, I'd have to say. It's like a gloomy kind of ruminating, pour out some drink song, I'd have to say. The song has a pretty great hook from Quan. I would definitely feel like real excellent hook. Probably one of Nas's best hooks on the song. I'd have to suppose definitely within that pitch. This is a quality kind of engaging album highlight. I'd have to say. So this is just a nice one. This is the sort of song that Tupac kind of does, just in a more nice sense. If you like songs like "Life Goes On" by Tupac, some of those type ones, or "Death Around the Corner," this is a good concept one to kind of get for fallen homies and things like that. Just within kind of more sunsetting kind of night type pitch as far as that particularly kind of goes. It's kind of a more in mourning type mode, I'd have to suppose, but it's just kind of a good concept to kind of get this as a highlight. It's pretty good, nice one, especially as a single. This just works as a pretty good highlight to kind of have this affable kind of vibe as far as that can happen. So it's just a nice one. Three good singles from Nas. All of these really display the album like an excellent kind of sense, I'd have to suppose. This is just some good kind of electricity that this album particularly kind of has. I mean, the thing about this particular album is it just didn't really use like a nightclub or kind of a social kind of dance song to really kick things off. I'd have to suppose all of these are just kind of more this kind. I mean, they're popular topics, but they're just kind of more versatile. I'd have to suppose that's kind of the concept about it. It's just interesting that Nas was out. It's interesting that Nas was able to pull these off and still be able to have like a good pitch to be able to advertise the album as far as that kind of happens. So it's a good concept. I like the pitch of that particular one. So yeah, this is like I was saying, there's 23 songs on this particular album, and I wound up recommending to you 15. So I'll go ahead and recommend those 15 songs to you, and we'll get to it. So the 15 songs would be Thief's Theme, Just a Moment, American Way, Nazareth Savage, You Know My Style, Suicide Bounce, No One Else in the Room, Getting Married, The Makings of a Perfect Bitch, Virgo, War, Bridging the Gap, Remember the Times, These Are Our Heroes, and Reason. That's some good concepts to be able to talk about some of these. So one in particular that was a pretty rave highlight would be Nazareth Savage. I definitely like this one. This is like a glitzy kind of outdoor city nightlife of a song, I'd have to say. It reminds me of Raekwon's Ice Cream song from the 90s. Raekwon's Ice Cream song from the 90s, I would definitely have to say. And it's just a ghoulish, and this song just has a ghoulish kind of freakish beat, I'd have to say. Yeah, Nazareth Savage definitely has one of the most swirling kind of demonic kind of beats on here. It's just interesting to kind of get this one. I haven't heard too many Nas songs like this one. It's a good particular pitch to kind of have this one. This one just kind of howls like a banshee, just really has like a demonic and kind of dirge like feel about it. So it's a pretty good, nice one. It's pretty similar to like Esham stuff, just some horrorcore type pitch, but it's just kind of one that just also feels like Raekwon's Ice Cream, I'd have to say. Just a real nice highlighted one to kind of get in that. Then I'd have to say Suicide Bounce is a pretty similar one to that one. This has Busta Rhymes on the hook. This is definitely a pretty boppish type one. This is like a swirling kind of haunt. This song is like a swirling kind of haunting night venue tune. I would have to say it's just a horrorcore like song, and it definitely has like a grim dance bounce about it, and it's just some lyrical damage that this song kind of has. So all of these songs, I would have to say Nas is pretty lyrical, so it's a good concept. You don't have to worry about Nas not having the lyrics come through because it's a good concept to kind of get some of these. He delivers on that. He delivers on that front. So he, in some cases, he might almost be too lyrical in certain senses. I kind of feel like the concept that's kind of a complaint about Nas is just the fact that he gets so lyrical to the point where the singles are just kind of, you want to more cut loose a little bit, and not be as serious and kind of zoned in as far as that kind of happens. But I feel like some of these do kind of work in a sense. I feel like Suicide Bounce is just kind of a nice dark kind of nightclub in like a horrorcore type sense. Kind of, I feel like Suicide Bounce is just kind of a nice haunting horrorcore type bop, just with a lot of snap as far as that particular pitch kind of happens. So that's a nice one. No One Else in the Room is another highlight. This one has Maxwell on there, and this is a pretty good one to kind of have. Definitely like this one. This is like a real jivey kind of R&B snap of a song. It's melodic and hooky. Definitely, I feel like this is just a good pitch for that particular kind of feel. This is just a good pitch for that particular kind of field. I'd have to say it's an electro dance jam, definitely, and this is just a radio ready song. And this song, and No One Else in the Room, is definitely a standout off this album. So this is definitely one of the album's best songs. I'd have to say just a real good pitch to kind of have this. This has a lot of electro dance. The song just has a lot of electro dance type jive. There definitely need to be more beats like this particular one on this. There definitely need to be more electric beats like this one on this particular album. But it's still a pretty good highlight to kind of get. It's still a pretty rock solid album, I'd have to say. Virgo is a pretty nice one. This is like a vintage kind of 80s East Coast like Virgo is a pretty nice one. This is like a vintage kind of 80s East Coast City Backstreets bounce of a song. I'd have to say this has a good Luda feature on there. I'm definitely glad that Ludacris was on this album. I definitely think there needed to be a lot more folks like Ludacris on this particular album. Probably would have helped this album out a lot more. It's pretty old fashioned, but I like the concept. This beat is old fashioned. This album is old fashioned. I like the concept of Ludacris being on here. He kills this verse, as does Nas. It's a good pitch to kind of get. And this is just like a good New York kind of house party cut, I'd have to say. So if you're more on like the East Coast places like Boston, and if you're more on like the East Coast places like Philadelphia and Boston, some of those type places, New York, some of those type places, I definitely have to say this is a pretty good skyscraper kind of building, penthouse type place for like a house party, something in that pitch kind of definitely have just in like a more ritzy kind of sense. But it's also pretty entry. This is just kind of a big city song, but it's also kind of ground level, I'd have to say. So if you are just kind of in like the alleyways and on the city streets, this is still a pretty nice one to kind of have. So I like the concept of that particular one. War is a pretty good highlight. This is like a day malaise kind of regular commute. Even this is like a day kind of malaise regular commute of a song, I'd have to say. It's got an even Steven kind of production and like a makeshiftist kind of mood. The song has like a makeshiftist kind of mood, I would have to say. It's just a balmy New York kind of gem, I would definitely feel like. And this is just kind of one. This is some of the songs on this particular album. There's some ones on here like War and Remember the Times, and These Are Our Heroes and Reason, that just kind of have like this certain kind of pitch of like some good day commerce and just overall New York kind of makeshift. If you like songs like Empire State of Mind by Jay-Z, this is a good kind of pitch for just like some good kind of just morning, day, brunch kind of traffic as far as that concept kind of happens. Just like a pretty upbeat kind of city stepping kind of highlight feel, I'd have to suppose. So that's a good nice one. Then Getting Married is a pretty nice one also. This is an in-between kind of sophisticated gem, I'd have to say. This is like a fancy living pizzazz of a song, I would have to say. It's just this song has a nice homely feel, and it keeps a good tempo about it. So I definitely like this one. This kind of feels like hotel type music, I'd have to say. Just something in a more kind of pizzazz type sense, just something with a little bit more suaveness about it. Definitely like the concept of this particular one. It's kind of the opposite. Getting Married kind of stands out from most of the rest of the album's kind of pitch, I would have to say, but still a pretty good highlight to kind of have that one just in a more suave type sense, I'd have to suppose. Then The Makings of a Perfect Bitch is another highlight. This is like an in-between kind of 2000s era evening hopping nightlife of a song, I'd have to say. This is just kind of some out and about contemporary, I would definitely feel like. This is just kind of some out and about kind of contemporary, I would feel like. This is just kind of more The Makings of a Perfect Bitch is definitely some mingling and kind of like the night fashion as far as that pitch kind of happens. Just kind of out and about, just kind of really being like a night owl, things like that as far as that pitch kind of happens. Just a real kind of Traverse type song, just really being, just kind of having some electric times as far as that pitch kind of particularly kind of happens. So that's a nice one. Then I would have to say, You Know My Style is a pretty good highlight. This is like a summer type song. This is like a carefree kind of summery out and about kind of song. I'd have to say this is a crack a brew type tune. I would definitely feel like definitely some beer sipping, things like that. barbecue type music. And this song just reminds me of like a spring break kind of pizzazz. So some of those songs that you used to hear on MTV back in like the early 2000s, some of that type pitch, just like a B2K type tune or 50 Cent type tune, something in that sort of pitch. This is just kind of some spring break type pizzazz. I would definitely have to suppose. So it's a pretty nice one to kind of get within that pitch. Definitely like the concept of it. Just some real good kind of summery bounce as far as that pitch kind of particularly kind of happens. American Way is a pretty good highlight. This has his former boo Khalees on this particular song, and she helps out the song pretty good. So it's a good concept to kind of get this one. It's a bouncy kind of two-step nightclub hopper. I would have to say this is definitely some vanilla nightlife, I'd have to say, and it's just a lyrical slaying of a song. This is just a lyrical slaying of a song. Nas definitely comes through on this particular song, and this has just got a steady approach towards it. So it's just a pretty good nightclub bounce of a song, I'd have to suppose. This one's up there with like No One Else in the Room and Suicide Bounce and some of those type ones. Just real good contemporary type tune. Just really feels like ripped out of like the 2000s, this early mid 2000s, something like that, like Usher's Yeah, some of those type songs. It's a real good nightclub kind of bounce, something like Indie Club. American Way is just kind of a song with like a vanilla kind of nightclub bounce, similar to like Indie Club by 50 Cent or Usher's Yeah, or some of those type pitches. As far as that kind of happens, like Eminem's Without Me, just some of those type pitches. This is a pretty steadfast song, I'd have to say. So I definitely like the concept of this one, but I'm glad that this song is on the album. Definitely glad that there's some highlights like this that are just kind of not singles, but do still have some nightclub bounce and just overall dance appeal. I'd have to suppose there's some good contemporary vibes to kind of have. So it's a good concept to get some of these. Remember the Times is a pretty good highlight. This is like a nostalgic kind of summer malaise of a song, I'd have to say. This is like some mid-paced kind of ruminating pep, definitely. And this is like a ladies' tune for like some balmy kind of kickbacks. So this is definitely some reminiscing about ladies as far as that pitch kind of happens. Just some summer fun as far as that pitch kind of goes. It's definitely like the concept of like a kind of balmy and kind of spring-like, just a balmy and kind of hot weather kind of kickback as far as that pitch kind of happens just within the summertime. Definitely like some good kind of just summer barbecue type stuff, just some summer picnic type stuff, and just kick back just within a sense of like some malaise kind of skies, just pink skies, stuff like that, just in the summer heat and just enjoying some times as far as that pitch kind of happens. Just a real nostalgic kind of tune that works. It's a good concept to kind of get that one. These Are Our Heroes is another highlight. This is like another makeshift. The song is some pretty basic makeshift commute, I'd have to say. It's good for some city outings, definitely. It's just a New York gem, and it's definitely a food for thought song. This is definitely a food for thought song, I'd have to say, and it's just got a fun topic about it. So this one's kind of like Nas kind of being sarcastic for some of his black heroes amongst that kind of pitch. He even calls out Kobe Bryant at one point, so it's a good particular pitch to kind of get some of this. Just the concept of talking about some folks that are kind of legendary in that sort of sense, and it's kind of having like a sarcastic kind of slant towards them as far as that pitch kind of happens. It's a good kind of basic kind of makeshift malaise, I'd have to say. Is just kind of a good concept, but just like a steadfast type tune just for like city hop as far as that kind of happens. Just some car commerce, just some car commerce within some basic traverse, I'd have to say, but it's a pretty good one. It's just a fun topic, I'd have to say. Reason is another pretty highlighted one. This is like a mid-paced kind of Bleary City life haze of a song, I'd have to say. This is like a makeshift kind of day commerce song, I would definitely feel like. And this is just a food for thought song, and it's got quality lyrics, and it's just a pretty affable song. So this one's a little bit more this one just kind of feels more middle class, I just would have to say. Just a standard kind of approach to like day commerce as far as that pitch kind of happens. Just a kind of more regular kind of blue collar type sense, just within the concept of just like getting to work, some of that type pitch of just like the standard kind of brunch and lunchtime commerce and breakfast commerce as far as that kind of New York City type pitch kind of happens with it. I mean, the thing about Nas with some of these songs is he doesn't quite have like the power. Jay-Z, when he made New York Makeshift, kind of went for more of like a power type trip, and just within the sense of just a little bit more powerful, and just kind of within the sense of like a more kind of business like and more entrepreneurial like type stuff. I feel like Nas kind of had a lot more this kind of more steadfast kind of makeshift type. I feel like Nas had a lot more regular day and kind of vanilla kind of makeshift kind of commerce as far as that pitch kind of happens. Not to say it's bad, but it's just kind of the concept that Nas was a lot more just steadfast and like the concept of just like standard kind of workaday kind of blue collar type makeshift, I would have to suppose. So it's a good pitch to kind of get that. But that's basically the album in terms of the songs I recommend. That's 15 out of 23. Just what I have to say. So some of the songs I don't recommend on here, there's just some kind of blunders on like the first disc. There's like some ones on here like Disciples, Say Cow Story, Live Now, Rest of My Life. These are just some kind of poor ones. I didn't really appreciate like the extra kind of, I mean, it's nothing against this Scarlet chick, but I kind of feel like I kind of feel like the Say Cow Story and Live Now are just kind of poor songs that just were kind of half songs. They lasted about 2 or 2.5 minutes, something like that. And then it switched to like some other stuff. This was not a good amalgamation of two songs on there. Didn't really like some of the productions on like Disciple and Rest of My Life. I felt like Rest of My Life was trying to be like a more kind of just like bleary kind of After Hours makeshift kind of song, but it just didn't pull it off quite as well. That one was just kind of a dreary one, but I just didn't like the production as much on that one. Message to My Feds, Sincerely We the People is just not one I would listen to that much. It was just kind of more of like an interlude type freestyle type song as far as that pitch kind of having. Just was not one I would often like come back to. Just didn't really feel that compelling to me. I didn't really appreciate the homely approach of Me and You, and I didn't really like the productions on Streets Disciple, the title track, and then UBR. And then I didn't really appreciate the productions on Streets Disciple and the unauthorized biography of Rakim. So those are kind of some poor ones as far as that pitch kind of particularly happened. But for the most part, there's not terribly much to really complain about on here. It's just kind of some homely type songs and some poorer productions. I kind of felt like these should have been replaced with more songs like Virgo or more songs like Suicide Bounce or more songs like Nazareth, Savage, some of those type ones. Definitely could have used more songs like that. Would have even taken another kind of reminiscing heritage type song like Bridging the Gap. Would have taken another song like War, just in like a more makeshift kind of sense. Would have taken another song like Just a Moment. Just needed some more songs like that, just within some of those type pitches. Another song like Thief's Theme definitely would have been pretty good. There just needed to be some more moments like the hit moments that there were on here. There's a lot. There's definitely 2/3 of this album is pretty wicked and kick ass as far as that pitch kind of happens. So it's just kind of the concept that some of these blunders on here do kind of detract from. It's just kind of the concept. If there had just been a few more songs, if there had just been a few more highlights, this definitely probably would have been like a full blown classic. But as it is, it's definitely well above average, I'd have to suppose. So what I'm going to score this album in terms of 15 out of 23, I'm going to give this album like a 7.75 out of 10. Just barely missed an 8 just within that pitch. It's definitely pretty rock solid, I'd have to suppose. But still, not liking 8 songs out of 23 is still kind of a misnomer as far as that pitch kind of happened. If it would have been like 19 or 20 out of 23, I probably would have given this album a 10. Would have gotten a 9 with like 17, 18, something like that. But it's just a few songs just behind the concept of being like a full blown kind of home run as far as that pitch kind of happens. But the social score, I'm going to give the social score like an 8.25 out of 10 because I feel like there's a lot of gems on here. It's pretty widespread, lots of good activities and just good concepts to kind of have. There's like some good lyricism on here, so it's a compellingness about that. This is really not ringtone rap or snap rap or stuff like that, but I would have to say the variety on this album is pretty charming and appealing. I would have to suppose definitely pretty affable vibes that this particular project kind of has. And Nas does step out. He has smoking songs, lady songs, summer songs, makeshift songs, things like that. Just some good pitches to kind of have. Some R&B type songs, even just some good bounce and just overall house party type bops and New York kind of pitch that just has some New York. And this album just has some good New York kind of flavor and energy. So it's pretty varietized. You're bound to find some. This album is pretty varietized. You're bound to find some good topics on here, I'd have to say. So it gets a 8.25 social, 7.75 score. So in terms of the future, like Nas has been dropping albums frequently. So in terms of the future, like Nas has been dropping albums frequently. So he has some hit albums with Hit Boy and some stuff like that, I'd have to suppose. So I'm definitely going to get to some more of these. I do want to review Hip Hop Is Dead and some other type ones, but this is a pretty rock solid double album. I definitely would say full of variety, full of hits, full of good stuff on here. The vast majority of this album's pretty damn good, I'd have to suppose. It's a good concept to kind of get, and I would definitely I would have to suppose, even if folks don't think this is a classic, it's definitely above average, and it's not a bad double album. So Nas did not drop the ball. It's just kind of the fact that it's just not a classic like Tupac and Biggie and some of those folks that had classic double albums, but it is well above average.